So, today we're going to dig into how a really ancient practice, we're talking heat therapy, is getting a serious look from modern science as a tool for some of our biggest modern problems: stress, sleep, and just our overall mental wellness. You know this feeling, right? It's that 2 a.m. curse where you're lying in bed, wide awake, and your brain is just running on a hamster wheel, replaying conversations, making to-do lists. It is absolutely exhausting. But what if one of the best tools to quiet that noise has actually been around for centuries? Yeah, we're talking about saunas. In this explainer, we're going to cut through all the wellness hype and get straight to the hard evidence. What does the science actually tell us about using heat to help our mental health?
All right, first up, our stressed out brains. I mean, let's just be real for a second. We are, as a culture, pretty burned out. The notifications, the constant pressure, it's just the soundtrack to our lives. And that's exactly why so many of us are on the hunt for tools that actually work. Which brings us to our next section, saunas, a stress reset. And I want you to think about this not as some kind of magic fix, but more like a training tool. It's a way to intentionally hit the reset button on your body's entire stress response system. So here's the million-dollar question. Does it really work on a chemical level? Can sitting in a hot room actually lower your stress hormones, like cortisol? Well, the short answer is yes, but the way it works is actually pretty counterintuitive, and it's fascinating. See, the heat from a sauna is what scientists call a hermetic stressor. The best way to think about it is like exercise. It's a small, controlled dose of stress that forces your body to adapt and get stronger. You're basically training your body to become more resilient to all kinds of stress, not just the heat. And the process is so elegant. First, you intentionally apply that heat stress. In response, your body releases a whole cascade of beneficial things, like endorphins. And then, over time, your whole system just gets better and more efficient at handling stress and recovering from it. And the payoff from this kind of training is huge. We're talking a release of endorphins. Those are your body's natural painkillers and mood boosters. You also get an increase in something called BDNF, which is like fertilizer for your brain cells, so important for mood. All of this helps flip the switch on your nervous system, moving you into that calm, rest, and digest state. It's a real, measurable change.
All right, section 3, unlocking deeper sleep. Now let's connect the dots between this stress reduction and what is probably one of the most well-documented benefits of using a sauna: getting better sleep. If you're someone who struggles with that racing mind at night, you're going to want to hear this. Okay, this is where it gets really cool. To fall asleep, your body's core temperature needs to drop. So by getting in a sauna about 1 to 3 hours before you want to go to sleep, you jack up your body temperature on purpose. This forces your body to work overtime to cool itself down, and that big post-sauna temperature drop is a massive signal to your brain that says, hey, it's time to sleep. So here's the takeaway, the thing you really need to remember. Timing is everything. You got to hit that sweet spot 1 to 3 hours before bed. Then let your body cool down on its own. And finally, be consistent. The data is pretty clear that several shorter sessions throughout the week work way better for sleep than just one super long session on the weekend. Okay, moving on to section 4, heat therapy for mood. Now we're getting into some really exciting and kind of groundbreaking research on how this all ties into supporting mood and potentially helping with things like anxiety and even depression. Okay, check this out because this data is just incredible. It comes from this massive study in Finland that followed thousands of guys for more than 20 years. What they found was that the men who used a sauna 4 to 7 times a week had a dramatically lower risk of developing psychotic disorders compared to the guys who only used it once a week. That is a powerful link between frequent heat exposure and long-term mental health. But, and I cannot stress this enough, a sauna is not a cure. It's not a replacement for a therapist or for medication. Think of it as a powerful teammate, a supporter in your overall mental health plan. It's an incredible tool, but it's part of a bigger toolkit. All right, section 5, your practical sauna guide. So we've covered the why. Now, let's get into the how. What do the protocols that are actually backed by research look like in the real world? So this table kind of breaks it all down for us. You can see how the different goals line up with different schedules. If you're just looking for better sleep and stress management, 2 to 3 times a week seems to be the sweet spot. For more direct mood support, studies looked at 3 or more sessions. And of course, that Finnish study found the biggest protective effects at 4 to 7 times a week.
Now, if you're new to this, please don't just jump in the deep end and try for 7 days a week. The best approach is always the one you can stick with safely. Start low and go slow. Maybe 2 short sessions a week. See how you feel. Then you can gradually build up from there. The most important rule is to listen to your body.
Okay, hold on. Before you run off to the nearest sauna, we absolutely have to talk about safety. Heat is a powerful force on the body, and that means it's not for everybody. And it's especially not for everybody if you're taking certain kinds of medication. Now, this is not a complete list, but it covers the big ones. Some medications, for example, can mess with your body's ability to regulate its own temperature. And for some conditions like severe panic disorder, the intense physical sensations of the heat could actually be triggering. So the bottom line is simple. If you have a pre-existing condition or you're on any medication, you have to talk to your doctor first. Period. All right, final section. Let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture here. Because a sauna habit doesn't exist in a bubble. Its real power comes from how it fits in with everything else you do. This is honestly the best way to think about it. It's a force multiplier. When you get better sleep because of the sauna, you have more energy for a workout. When you're less stressed, it's a little bit easier to eat well. You see? It creates this amazing upward spiral. And you can see that idea perfectly right here. Heat therapy is just one slice of the pie. It supports sleep, which supports movement, which supports nutrition. It all works together. You're building an ecosystem for your health, not just doing one thing. So, after all that, what's the bottom line? Well, the science is really solid that saunas can help build stress resilience, improve sleep, and support your mood. What's still promising but needs more research are the very specific protocols for certain conditions and how best to use it as that adjunct therapy. So we'll just leave you with this one last thought to chew on. In a world that is constantly screaming at us to cool down and calm down, isn't it interesting that maybe, just maybe, the key to a quieter mind is to intentionally and safely turn up the heat?